I'm supposed to be working here, reading the news and, researching, fact checking. And I see these Twitter threads every so often where people start arguing about political issues. And of course, I've got my opinion. So I saw this Twitter thread between Karlyn and Shoe0nHead talking about housing and working jobs. And I had to chime in. So I tweeted about my experience, how I feel about work, the American dream, socialism and the left. And I think let's have a conversation about what it means to achieve the American dream, work hard in this country. Because I think too many people on the left are absolutely entitled and do not understand what the real world is because they have been pampered, essentially. Look, people today in poverty have problems. I am all for figuring out ways to improve the standard of living for everybody, including, even middle class people, upper class people. Let's make life better for everybody. Now, I'm less concerned about upper class people. I'm more concerned about people in poverty. But I got to tell you something, man. Hard work, you got to do it. End of story. There's no excuse for not doing hard work. And too many people now don't realize that even though they may be considered poor today, they live such better lives than people who came before us. And of course, the response I see in these threads are, so of course we're all doing better. It doesn't mean we accept how bad things are now. No, it means that you think it's bad now, but back then they'd kill to be where you are. And it means, here's my favorite part. In 100 years from now, we're going to be sitting here having a conversation, and there's going to be some lefty being like, it's absurd that someone has to work 2 jobs in order to afford interplanetary travel. The government should be subsidizing interplanetary travel. You get the point? We have amazing technologies today, air conditioning, refrigerators. Poor people have these things. These were luxury items for only the ultra wealthy a long time ago. What that means is poor people today are rich relative to where we used to be. We're comparing poor people in poverty today to rich people today. That doesn't make sense. It'll always exist that way. Let me show you this thread, and I'll explain to you what's going on, because the gist of this is I work nonstop all the time, period. No days off, ever. Like rarely. Only when I have to, when I have some kind of ailment or something, which is rare too, because I exercise almost every day as well. Some people don't want to do any work. And we've really come to a point where we are spoiled. The idea of having 2 jobs just to survive, what does that really mean? I think the far left has a weird view of things. Let me show you this thread. A Teen Vogue writer said abolish landlords. In response, Karlyn said, or you need to save for a down payment and go buy your own house if you don't want to rent. It's not hard. FHA loans for first-time homeowners make it doable for anyone willing to save. That's how I bought my home. I acted like an adult, and now I don't have a landlord. Shoe0nHead responds, this is literally the just buy a house meme. You cannot be serious. I got to stop right there, because you can actually really easily, relatively easily, I shouldn't say really easily, but I should say it's accessible through FHA for people, to just buy a home. If you have money to put a down payment, like a first and last month's rent, then you've got money for buying a house. You do. I'm not going to pretend like everybody can do it. So maybe you can make fun of the just buy a house meme. But I think this is another mistake of the far left when they operate under the assumption that it's really difficult to do. And it sounds actually like a naive young person thing to say, especially when you have access to the internet. Look, I get it. Not everyone can buy a house, but there are government programs through the FHA, which is a government program to make it more accessible and easier for lower income people to buy homes, and then you don't have a landlord. In response to this, a bunch of people jumped in and started saying things like, you still have a landlord? It's the bank. No, you don't. The bank can't stop me from playing music at 2 a.m. I own my own house. I can go in the backyard and do whatever I want. I can walk. I can get a dog. I don't got to ask questions. I owe money to the bank. They don't control my house. Karlyn says, I'm serious. It was round about 2 months between when I decided I want to buy a home and when I bought my home. I literally decided to go buy a home, and then I did. Shoe's response, I know it's possible. I can do it. Do you know about 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck? Renting is the only option for most people. No, it's not, Karlyn says. I was not making a lot of money when I managed to save for the down payment required for an FHA loan, which is significantly less than what is normally required. Shoe says paycheck to paycheck means no extra money to save. Karlyn said, then get another job or start a business. I had a side hustle in addition to my full-time job, and that was how I did it. No one is a victim of this world, Shoe, and you are not helping anyone by telling them they are. Shoe0nHead says, you think it's normal that someone should have to work 2 jobs to support themselves? You don't think we should maybe fix that? It is absolutely normal for someone to have to work 2 jobs to support themselves. End of story, period. I'm done. Okay? Back before we had luxury and technology and air conditioning and refrigerators, people worked from sun up to sundown. Today, people who try to be self-sustainable work from sun up to sundown. Go live on a farm, a real farm, and contribute and see just how much work has to be done if you want to survive. During Occupy Wall Street, they granted some land to some of the activists. I know people who went to go live on that farm. They immediately fled the farm. They were there for a couple of weeks and realized just how much work goes into surviving and just how little you actually get from this. You had to work 16 hours a day, every day, no day off, just to have the bare minimum. No AC, no electricity. You were growing your own food, tending to the crops just to survive. Because guess what? When winter comes, if you're not prepared, you don't make it. So yes, it is normal actually for human beings to have to work. In fact, early humans had malnourishment because they were constantly in struggle. But guess what? Things got better. Today, what does it mean that you need to work 2 jobs to survive? Here was my response. People with 2 jobs work less than I do. Are we trying to find some kind of minimum life standard? I'm all down for finding ways to improve the lives of people in poverty, but it's important to understand that people in poverty today live better than 99% of people 100 years ago. The point being that there will never be a time when people will be satisfied where they are. And the solution isn't to say, I should not have to work, because you will always have to work. Think about it this way. People say, no, you have to understand, if you want a job today, you need a cell phone and internet. You can get cell phone and internet very, very cheap. Actually, they have like $20 Android phones and really cheap plans. But you're right. You do need the money to buy those services. It's going to be really difficult to function in a modern society if you don't have a cell phone. 100 years from now, you're going to need a Glorbotron, which plugs into your brain so you can instantly communicate with the bank and with your manager to know when you got to be at work and what you got to do. And your job will be something ridiculously tedious, and you will have a job. And you'll be complaining that your luxury yacht isn't nearly as big as the astro yachts the interstellar colonists have. The point I'm saying is, right now, to complain that you have to work 2 jobs to have a refrigerator, air conditioning, a cell phone, access to the internet, you have access to the summation of human knowledge as a poor person in this country. We are doing tremendously well for ourselves, and you don't have to work 2 jobs. If you choose to only work 1, then maybe you won't be living in that yacht. Maybe you don't want a yacht. Maybe you just want healthcare. Okay. Dentistry today, you can't afford it. I would like to figure out a way to help you. I'm actually left-leaning in this regard, and I'm all for using certain programs to raise standards of living. I like unemployment. I think these things can work if they're implemented properly, but only if you have a group of people who are willing to do the work. Now, a person today, a poor person, has better medical care than Rockefeller did, than the big oil barons did 100 years ago. Because society has improved and has improved for everyone, even poor people, which means relative to what you are being given, you have to do less and less work over time. Think about it this way. A person who worked full time all day, every day, did not have access to this amazing medical care we had. No matter how hard they worked, they'd never get it. People today want they want a better standard for themselves. And they work really, really hard to get close to it. But what's happening is you have people who look to the wealthy and say, I want that, I deserve that. Okay, I'd like you to be able to get it. But realize that means working 2 jobs. Get it? I don't know why it's so hard to understand. You can sit back and do nothing and be a fat homeless person. I'm not trying to be mean. America has overweight homeless people. Homelessness is a problem. Okay, that we got to solve. Some people work full time just to be able to afford an apartment. I know. It's still a struggle. Poverty still exists, and there are still lack of access to resources. Over time, things will improve. So here's what I want to, here's my main point here. Why is it that I work more than than somebody who works 2 jobs. I do. I have no days off and I work 16 hours a week. I certainly don't have to. What's the difference between me and somebody else who doesn't want to do that but demands they have a certain standard of living? Why can't you work 16-hour days all day, every day with no days off too? That's my choice, right? I think people deserve days off. I like the idea of a 40-hour work week. I think people should be able to balance their personal and work lives, all that stuff. But I also recognize that if you want something, you have to work for it. And you are entitled to nothing. So I don't know how else to explain this other than, look, there's a lot of news, a lot of things for me to cover. I saw a Twitter thread. I decided to address it. So here's my response to the thread as it is right now. Yes, people should work 2 jobs if they want to buy a house. Why is that surprising to anybody? Why should someone be given a house? What entitles you to a house? Someone has to build the house. Someone has to sell the house. Someone has to maintain the house. And guess what? You might have to actually work in order to generate the resources you need to buy that house. When dealing with people who have no experience in the real world, like I think one of the things that greatly benefited me throughout all, through with things like this is that I've been homeless. Guess what? When you're homeless, you don't even get to sleep. I'm not kidding. You don't get to sleep. I've gone from living in a car and I've spent a few days sleeping on benches in parks. Not an exaggeration. And guess what? When you're sleeping on a bench in a park, there is no time off at all. Because when you're sleeping with one eye open the whole time, waking up every 20 minutes because you need to take care of it, you need to protect yourself. That's life in the real world. But we've created this bubble where people are like, I shouldn't have to work all day. Imagine living in the wilderness. Imagine, everything taken for granted by people. So let me wrap this up because I keep these segments relatively short. My ultimate point is you do as much work as you need to get what you want, but not everybody will have access. Someone responded, Tim, I think they said, you're what's considered a specialty field. You're working 1 job and getting paid more. What people are asking is that they can work 1 job and to afford to survive, not go homeless. That's not how it works. That'll never be how it works. Life is a treadmill. If you just walk, you don't move forward. If you stand still, you move backwards. In order to get ahead, you have to run. The reason I'm where I am and successful is because I've been running at full sprint nonstop for a decade. You don't have to do that like I do, but recognize if you're stuck where you are, you have to work more. And guess what? You might be all the way at the back of that treadmill, that conveyor belt, whatever. And that means you have a lot of running to do to catch up with the middle class in this country. Is it fair? Of course it's not. Life isn't fair. But you might have to work hard. And you can't yell to the people in front of you, hey, come back here and help me run forward. Some people might do it. I'm all about that. But at the end of the day, it's your responsibility. And guess what? Yes, working 2 jobs. If you work 2 jobs, if you work 16 hours a day, I work more than 2 jobs. I work 16 hours a day, all day, every single day with no days off. If you do that for a long enough time, you will be successful. Maybe not as successful as me or other people, but you'll be more successful than people unwilling to work. That's a fact. I'll leave it there. I don't know. Fun conversation. I know there's no real opportunity for rebuttal from Shoe or from Karlyn or whatever, but I just wanted to make a segment about it. I got a couple more segments coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.